Okay, we want to thank you for coming, and we are here to discuss House File 3396 and its Senate Companion Bill, SF 3002, as introduced. These bills have been titled the Individual's Right to Privacy and Safety in Public Accommodation Act. These bills pertain to human rights, clarifying certain provisions in the Human Rights Act, which governs biological specific accommodations. They amend Minnesota Statute 363A and certain subdivisions. The bill protects the privacy and public safety of adults and young people, both in our society and in our schools. The bill originated from a constituent of mine who works in the metro area. This is her testimony. At her place of employment, a man declared himself to be a woman this past year and informed the employer that he had decided to use the woman's restroom. Both of these individuals were longtime employees of this company. The employer decided not to object, and the man began to use the women's restroom. This, according to my female constituent, caused great anxiety, discomfort, and fear for her and other women. They complained to the employer, and the remedy, according to my constituent, was to tape the cracks of the bathroom stalls shut to prevent anyone from seeing in. Needless to say, this did not alleviate the fear or discomfort of the female employees. These women are now using a restroom in another building in order to protect their safety and privacy. My constituent is afraid to protest too much because she believes her job would be at risk. This bill is necessary after the Minnesota Supreme Court decision in 2001, Goins versus West Group, which dealt with the subject of individuals using the public accommodations of their choice rather than the traditionally assigned public accommodations based on their biological sex. The bill uses sexual orientation as already defined in Minnesota law and ensures that anyone, whether gay, straight, or transgender, may use a restroom based on biological sex, which is the only objective method of preserving the safety and privacy of all. This bill provides exceptions for small children accompanying an opposite-sex parent, disabled people accompanying an opposite-sex caregiver, emergency personnel, and maintenance personnel. It also covers an opposite-sex person in a bona fide emergency, which could include emergency incontinence, where no bathroom is otherwise available. There's also an exception for single occupancy facilities. At this time, I will call on Senator Scott Newman, an attorney, to comment on the 2001 Minnesota Supreme Court case, Goins versus West Group, as to why this bill is necessary and is a necessary clarifying extension of that decision. After Senator Newman, we have several parents who would like to, concerned parents who would like to share their testimonies, followed by your questions. Senator Newman.
Thank you, Representative Gruenhagen. There's 3 points that I would like to make this morning in this press conference. And the first is that I believe this bill represents the vast majority of the wishes of my constituents. And I think that lost in this conversation involving whether or not this is discrimination or not, what's lost in the conversation is the reasonable right of privacy that people have when they are using public accommodations. And so if we apply this tenet, in other words, the thought that people do have a reasonable right of the expectation of privacy, if we apply that to the Goins case, this is what I think you're going to find. Currently, the transgender community is just literally screaming about this bill. And they do so without regard to what many people believe to be their right to privacy. And it's literally just drowning out their voices. But here is the issue that we are discussing, and that is simply whether providing accommodations on the basis of gender, whether that is a violation of the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and is it discriminatory? And the answer to that question was answered in 2001, and it is not. What the Goins case said, and incidentally, I found it interesting to see that Justice Page, who at that time was probably one of the most liberal justices on the court, specifically concurred in the findings of the court at that time. And what the court said was, an employer's designation of an employee restroom use based on biological gender is not sexual orientation discrimination in violation of the Minnesota Human Rights Act. Case dismissed. So I think what you have to keep in mind here is that there is a balance that we have to try and maintain. And that, we have to be conscious of the transgender community. I do not dispute that. But do not lose track of the fact that in all likelihood, the vast majority of Minnesotans do in fact have this reasonable expectation of privacy, and they wish to exercise it. The last point that I want to make is this. Anytime a legislator brings forth a piece of legislation that is controversial, we undoubtedly, we hear from all manner of folks. And I am hearing from my constituents that are strongly supporting this, and I am hearing from the transgender community that strongly oppose it. And I will tell you that I would estimate on about 10 to 1 the emails and phone calls coming out of the transgender community are coarse, they are threatening, they're crude, and I will tell you that all that does for me is to strengthen my resolve that I'm going to protect my constituents and those who I believe to be in the majority. So I'll give you just one example. I'm not going to tell you what this guy said to me, but I can tell you that there's a guy out there by the name of Cole Yates. Excuse me a moment. I'm sorry, I've got the correct. There's a guy out there by the name of Cole Yates, and he sends me an email off of an email address tyates@macalester.edu. Now, I don't know if Mr. Yates is a staff member, a student, a professor, I really don't know. But I can tell you that in the coarsest terms possible, this man has explained to me in very short terms what he thinks about this bill. And I just want the transgender community to know that I'm keeping every single one of these phone calls and I'm keeping every single one of these emails. And I believe that what we are seeing is that the transgender community, as it applies to this bill, they're not the bullied, they're the bullies. And so I do intend to move forward with this bill and do what I can to protect the reasonable right of privacy of my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Newman. At this time, we'll have a series of parents and concerned citizens to share their testimony. I've asked them to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes at the maximum.
Thank you. My name is Barb Anderson, and I am speaking in support of House File 3396. This bill is necessary to protect the safety and privacy of all students, as well as to safeguard their modesty and their dignity. The gender advocates who are a part of the Safe Schools Coalition are using bullying prevention as a vehicle to undermine personal privacy by insisting that all public bathrooms and locker rooms be designated gender neutral. This extreme demand will put every school-age child at risk of sexual harassment and sexual assault by forcing schools to allow boys into girls' restrooms and locker rooms and girls into boys' restrooms and locker rooms. Bathrooms and locker rooms are intimate settings where the right to privacy and safety must not be threatened. If students do not feel safe at school, effective learning will not take place. The right to privacy, to not be viewed in a state of undress by the opposite sex, is a constitutional right that courts have long upheld. This bill is a logical, common sense bill that requires everyone to use the bathrooms and other private facilities that match their biological sex. This bill will protect students and adults who do not want to have mixed-sex spaces for personal privacy forced on them. We must protect the bodily privacy rights of boys and girls and men and women. A child who is struggling with a psychological disorder like gender dysphoria must never be bullied and is entitled to compassion, dignity, and respect. Special bathroom accommodations can be made for that child. However, they should not be granted special rights just because they are confused or in denial about their biological sex. We must respect the privacy rights of the majority of children who do not have psychological disorders. And it is the wish of this majority to have bathrooms and locker rooms separated by biological sex. This is such a basic, common sense request. Please honor the wisdom of long-standing policies and traditions that have preserved personal privacy and have kept our girls and women safe. Thank you.
I am going to be reading a statement from a parent in Virginia, Minnesota, who could not come. This is from Cindy Hohenstein, a parent of Virginia, Minnesota. On Wednesday, February 10th, 2016, a 15-year-old boy who claims to be a girl walked into the girls' locker room and, while clearly looking around at 5 girls who were already undressing, began to undress himself in front of them, pulling off his pants and shirt. The 5 girls, who were in various states of undress for basketball practice, some without shirts or shorts, were shocked and upset by the boy's actions and felt unsafe, so they quickly retreated to the restroom to complete changing their clothes. The boy tried to do it again 2 days later, but was prevented by one of the girl's boyfriends who stood in the way. However, it is continuing to go on. Parents who lodged complaints with the administration were told that the district is required by law to allow the boy to use the girls' bathroom and locker rooms. A complaint was filed with the police, but no action was taken to protect our children. A district elementary teacher reported that she was told by the administration that she was required to allow her students to use opposite-sex restrooms if they identified as the other sex. A female elementary student has even been told to use the boys' bathroom simply because she likes to do boy things and prefers pants to dresses. They claim the law requires it. The same boy who has been allowed to be a member of the girls' basketball team and the girls' marching band has also demanded to sleep in the same hotel rooms with girls on band trips, but he has so far been denied. The fact is, however, parents have been informed by legal counsel that federal law does not require such a violation of our children, and the Department of Education and the school district have no legal authority for claiming that it must permit this male student to use the facilities set aside for females. We need this legislation to protect our children. Thank you for introducing HF 3396 and SF 3002.
Why don't you give your name? You didn't give your name.
My name is Julie Quist, and I'm reading this on behalf of Cindy Hohenstein from Virginia, Minnesota.
My name is Emily Zenos. I'm from St. Paul. Thank you to everyone who is here to protect children all across the state of Minnesota. I'm a mother to 3 children who, until last month, were attending a public charter school in St. Paul. This charter school has become home to students of many ethnic, political, and religious backgrounds. This usually harmonious community was torn apart when gender activists showed up demanding that every child be given instruction on gender inclusivity. The initial demand was that every student read a book about a boy who wears a dress. Families who objected were told that the goal was to foster sensitivity and inclusiveness and nothing else. But we soon learned that the outcome, and indeed the goal of these efforts, was to mix the sexes in the bathrooms. The school's administration repeatedly denied that bathrooms would be mixed and stated that they would maintain the privacy of all students. But after months of pressure from outside activist groups, the school has proposed a policy that puts boys in girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, and changing areas. Parents deserve to know that their children are safe at school and that policies that put boys in girls' bathrooms are dangerous. Our former school has lost a number of families over this issue, including my own. Applications are down for the first time in 13 years. Schools all across the state need common sense legislation to guide them in creating bathroom policies, because parents like me need to trust that schools will safeguard their children's privacy. The Safe Bathrooms Bill will protect our state's youngest and most vulnerable citizens from becoming the latest victims of gender ideology. Please work to pass the Safe Bathrooms Bill for all students. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Knippel. I am here with Emily, too. I'm a mom of 3 school-age children, and this topic became very real for our charter school this year when parents of a gender non-conforming kindergartner insisted our elementary school be taught what it means to become gender non-conforming. This quickly led to successfully implementing policy, allowing children access to bathrooms and locker rooms of the opposite sex. Over 100 parents have voiced our many concerns with this policy. We have been repeatedly told by our school administration that asking a child to use a restroom that is against the gender the child thinks that he or she is in fact discriminatory. Our school's attorney boasted that her law firm is helping over 70 schools put this policy in place. Unfortunately, for many schools, policy is stealthily being added to mandate mixed-sex bathrooms and locker rooms while parents are being kept in the dark, or told that this is the law now and in accordance with the Minnesota Safe and Supportive Schools Act and Title IX. It needs to be clarified in law that mixed-sex bathrooms are not mandated or accepted. A mixed-sex bathroom or locker room is bad for all kids, including gender-confused children. Logic and common sense are being pushed aside in order to advance activist agendas in our schools that cause more harm than good for our children. I am unwilling to put my daughter and sons in harm's way and tell them to expect to relinquish their privacy and safety rights at the bathroom door in order to appease a small and misguided minority. Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of elected officials. Oh, we have one more citizen, or mom. Oh, Gary, okay. Yep. I thought you were going to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello, I am Ann Taylor. I am the mother of 2 children, both a teenager and a preschooler, who is very much in support of these bills. A little over a year ago, I was with my youngest child at a swim facility called Foss Swim School, where I first encountered the use of changing rooms in which there is 0 separation for male and female changing facilities. Even though I am a former lifeguard and aquatic instructor of 8 years, I was not prepared for what I would encounter in an all-open changing facility with my children at the newly remodeled St. Louis Park location. When I approached the desk at the newly remodeled facility, I asked where the women's changing rooms were located. The employee said that they were now all one. Confused, I inquired where and how people changed their clothing in this new space. I was then told that there are no designated male or female stations. Instead, there were individual stalls for privacy in one large open space. I recall asking, "So my child and I have to change clothes next to someone of the opposite sex? I have 2 girls. That doesn't seem right, and I don't think I'm comfortable with this." The employee behind the desk did not apologize, follow up, or explain anything else as I headed into the big room with my youngest child in tow. Upon entering the space, there were men, women, and children inside the big changing area, approximately 15 individual changing stalls, of which a half an inch to an inch above and below the changing stalls were exposed, enough to slide a smartphone through. There are 4 unisex bathrooms, each with handicap facilities, including showers, and a heavy locked door with 0 visibility. Those are the places I had to bring my child that day to change. Previously, the location had 3 separate changing rooms and bathroom stalls, male, female, and family. Now, they were all one. And while there are separate changing stalls and private bathroom accommodations for the handicap, there are no accommodations for separate sexes. I expressed my concern as well as disappointment to staff that myself and my child would be required to change in and out of bathing suits alongside other adults of the opposite sex. My oldest child's response, "If I have to change in a place like that, I would ask you to take me out and not come back." Young developing girls as well as boys are in need of privacy as well as dignity, and I feel the new layout at the St. Louis Park location does not accommodate for that. Upon speaking directly to owner John Foss, it was clear staff, construction crews, and state laws do not consider this during a remodel phase. This experience brought about concerns for safety of children and families as the new changing site appears to be a free-for-all during full sessions with so many people coming in and out of one large changing area. While I did note a female employee wandering in and out of the changing facility, I wondered what her role was in that room and for what purpose. What if it had been a male employee? These kinds of changing facilities go against our family values in that my children will not be conditioned to thinking that these types of accommodations are the new norm. It is increasingly difficult for people to maintain their right to privacy while businesses are being bullied into utilizing both gender locker rooms and opening women's bathrooms to men. I find these kinds of accommodations unhealthy, both mentally and emotionally, while not only violating the privacy of children, but exploiting them, including adults, by choosing to host one-room-only changing sites. I am in support of this bill. Thank you.
How do you do? My name is Gary Swenson. I am from the New London Spicer area. It's about 100 miles west of here in west central Minnesota. And we just found out the other day that we were in for a rude awakening from our basketball slumber. We read an article in the local paper that said that the Department of Education had brought out 2 experts to teach the New London Spicers teachers how to address LGBT issues and students in the school. Now, there was some things in that article that we were concerned about, and while we were thinking about these things, here we found out the school board was going to vote on a transgender policy. Well, a few of us went to their website, downloaded the policy, and we were shocked by some of the things we've seen there, and you've heard about them here today. And so we quickly organized as fast as we could. We only had a couple of days, and asked them to delay the action of this bill, or this policy, until we had maybe 2-3 months, until we had time to educate the community and get people to have input in it. This is a controversial policy, and they didn't listen to us. They went ahead on their schedule anyway, and so now we're organizing to try and get the word out about this stuff. And the reason we're so concerned about this, there are a couple of reasons, is it's the transgender and, what's the other word? There's a whole bunch of terminology in here we haven't even heard of before. It's gender nonconforming, which pretty much means any kind of sexual expression whatsoever. And the language of the bill more or less says just what we've heard today, that a boy, if he decides to be a girl one day, can walk into any girl's facility. You can't deny him and do what he wants to do. That's one thing. And another thing we found out in the bill was they use this term sex assigned a gender. So instead of now, when you're born, you're the boy, you're a girl, no, they say that's wrong. Now it's up to the individual to decide what sex they want to be at some later point in time. Well, this alters the whole, we just couldn't believe it. We thought this was the most bizarre thing we'd ever heard. And I can't imagine being a student going to that school and living under those conditions. And they have all kinds of rights, and I don't think they're helping them students either. If they're sexually confused, this is not the way to help them get through this period of their life. So anyway, I just thank Senator Newman and Representative Gruenhagen for presenting this bill. It's timely, and we desperately need it, and I just thank him for that. Thank you.
Okay, there is a Senate session coming up, so we're running a little bit short, but we will stand for questions. I would just say this, to the degree that the media can minimize the reporting on name calling, okay, and maximize the reporting on the issue itself to help the citizens of the state of Minnesota understand what this issue is. And it's a difficult, passionate, critical issue, I believe, and sensitive. And so I think you can provide a great service to both sides or all sides by doing proper reporting and minimizing the name calling and maximizing the discussion on the issue. With that, we'll stand for questions.
Representative, have you been promised a hearing on this bill yet?
No, not yet. We've put a request in, and we're waiting to hear back.
So do you not know at this point if it has the support of top leadership?
Well, we have, I think, 44 co-authors on it, and some of those co-authors are leadership positions. So I do think that the majority of leadership is supportive of this bill.
Representative, the governor, and not surprisingly to you, I'm sure, is not supporting this bill. How do you move it forward ultimately into law without that?
One of the things I've learned, I was elected to my local school board for 16 years, and one of the things I've learned is that public pressure can create a lot of change in elected officials. So part of this news conference and the introduction of this bill is to educate the public on this issue. And I believe that the majority of Democrats, independents, and Republicans, regardless of political persuasion, need to participate on this bill, and I believe that the majority will come to the right conclusion, which is that we need an objective standard, biological sex, that we can all agree on, okay, in terms of what or how public facilities are used. Again, the bill protects gays, straight, and transgender based on an objective method that all of us can agree with. And people do have rights on both sides of this issue, and one of those rights is the right to privacy and the right to public safety. And as you heard here today, both of those rights are being infringed, not only on the children, but also on adults in our society. So I think a reasonable compromise, which I believe this bill represents, is the best solution going forward.
To follow up on that, the governor Dayton said he would veto the bill, much like South Dakota Governor Dennis Dugard did with the similar legislation there. He's a Republican, but vetoed it in part by saying that it addressed no pressing issues in South Dakota. I'm curious, if you're seeing this not be passed in a state like South Dakota, which is, leads Republican and with a Republican governor, what does it say when Minnesota proposes something like this?
I haven't read the South Dakota bill, and I haven't yet read his reason for vetoing it, the governor there. I would say this, that I don't know, you probably realize it's a presidential election, okay? And a lot of politicians say a lot of things, and they tend to switch their positions over a period of time. I'm hoping the governor will listen to the concerns expressed here and across the state of Minnesota, and I believe, again, that this bill represents a reasonable compromise to protect the privacy and safety of all of those involved, gay, straight, and transgender, including our children.
Representative, I just have a question about implementation. If the bill was to be passed, it's much easier to implement this in schools where teachers can be involved, but how are you going to police this in public facilities?
Well, I would simply say that it's just like anything else, citizens file complaints. And when a complaint is filed with a security person, whether it be at a mall or a public facility, there's usually an investigation. The law will simply support that investigation, and appropriate action, I believe, will be taken on this issue.
And the first woman who spoke, identify herself, I didn't catch the name.
It was Barb Anderson. She's from Anoka.
Champlin, the Anoka Hennepin School District.
Okay, with that, the Senate is going to be in session, and we wouldn't want them to shirk their responsibilities, okay? And I just encourage you to familiarize yourself with the Minnesota Supreme Court decision, Goins versus, what is that, Ward? Thank you for coming. Oh, and I have a packet for you at the door. If you're a media person, I have an additional packet.